Welcome to Belts, Bumps, and Barbed Wire, a pro wrestling podcast brought to you by DMV Wrestling at dmvprowrestling.com. Be sure to visit the site every day for the latest pro wrestling news. Thank you for joining us. Hi, I'm Jeff Quinton. I'm your host. Our guest today on Belts, Bumps, and Barbed Wire is Spencer Slade. He's a native of Pennsylvania and played college football at Shaw University and received an MBA from California University of Pennsylvania. I want to thank Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling for arranging this interview. Spencer wrestles for them and will be on the card for Wrestling at the J in Fairfax, Virginia on October 28th. Stay tuned to the DMV Wrestling website for more on that show. Spencer Slade wrestles for several companies and is currently one half of the MCW Tag Team Champions along with Mushmaster Tim Spriggs. How you doing, Spencer?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's great to have you. So I'm going to start off with some icebreaker questions that I usually ask all the guests before I move on to the rest of the questions. What's your favorite food?
My favorite food is actually going to be something that's probably going to be boring to most of your listeners. They're probably expecting a burger or pizza, but me, I love nothing more than a grilled chicken. As you can see why, because I look the way that I do, but favorite food would be some grilled chicken.
That makes sense to me because I've seen the shape you're in and I've seen you wrestle, so. And what's your favorite thing to drink?
Favorite thing to drink is actually what I'm drinking right now, coffee. Coffee is pretty much my go-to thing, just getting that caffeine in to stay ready. So coffee would be my favorite.
Keurig, French press, old school coffee, or how do you do it?
I am actually an old school guy. I'm all black, straight black coffee. That's me.
That's me when I drink coffee. I drink Death Wish coffee when I drink coffee and it's straight black.
Actually, I have Death Wish coffee. I'll do that too. That's a great brand of coffee. I highly suggest coffee lovers out there give that a try if you want something strong.
I worked night shift for the last 5 years before my current job, so that was what I drank at work.
And that's probably the best choice that you can make. What's
your favorite band or musician?
Band or musician? That's a good question. I would have to say probably my favorite musician is probably going to be what I listen to a lot, and believe it or not, I'm actually more of like an R&B kind of guy. So I would say anything like an Usher would probably be one of my favorite. The Black Eyed Peas, I like them as a band. Those are probably going to be my two right there.
Those are two good ones. And what's the last book you read?
Last book I read was actually I finished it actually about a week ago. It was the book that Rip Rogers wrote about being a heel and being a babyface. I think can't remember what the title is, but it's a book that Rip Rogers wrote about pro wrestling. It's like a bestseller. That's the book that I actually read recently.
I've heard of that one, and I want to read it. It's on my list. Right now, I just started the new Hornbaker book on Ric Flair.
I've heard about that one. I want to eventually read that one. But yeah, it's been the Rip Rogers one, and then I read the Dr. Tom Pritchard book that he wrote, the entire curriculum for FCW. That was the other one that I read recently too.
That sounds interesting. The last wrestling book I read in total was the Todd Gordon book about ECW.
Oh man, I bet that was great.
It was great. It really spilled some tea.
That's awesome.
I know you have a prep and amateur athletic background. Could you talk to me about that?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's part of my story. So what's funny is, obviously I wear the headgear because, I've obviously done wrestling when I was younger, and, I wear the hearing aids, and it goes with my look too. But it's funny is people that have never seen me before, they automatically think that I was like an all-American collegiate wrestler, whereas in all reality, I was actually an all-American football player. So I always try to explain that to people. And it makes sense because not only do I look like an amateur wrestler, but I actually wrestle like an amateur wrestler because I've obviously had experience with it. It's just that football was the sport that I played in college and a little bit past that, in the CFL. So I've played athletics my entire life. Every single sport that's out there I've done, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, tennis, swimming, you name it, I've done. And then as I got into high school, I kind of dialed it down just to football going into, my junior, senior year because football was obviously my favorite sport and the one that I loved the most, football and pro wrestling. Went to Shell University where I did well. And then after that, I had the opportunity to try out for a couple like CFL football teams. Thank God that I, didn't make it because that allowed me to finally pursue wrestling, which was my first passion. I started training to be a wrestler as soon as I hung up the cleats, and that's pretty much my athletic background.
That answers actually 3 or 4 questions I had, so that's good.
I sometimes give multiple answers at one, but in all honesty, that's really what I did. I played all the sports that I could as a kid. I also did a little bit of a little bit of jiu-jitsu a little bit earlier when I was younger, and then I kind of morphed into boxing more as I got older, and I still train boxing to this day. You can kind of see it in my work a little bit, but those would be kind of the other 2 combat sports I've done. So I try to be the most all-around athlete that I could be because it only helps you in the ring.
What wrestlers influenced you the most when you were looking at becoming involved in pro wrestling?
2 people in Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. Those were my top 2 guys. I idolized Randy Orton as a kid. I thought he was the coolest guy to ever walk the face of the earth. And I started watching wrestling about 2003, so it was Kurt Angle at first. And then kind of towards the mid to late 2000s, it became Randy Orton just because Kurt obviously went over to TNA. But Kurt Angle and Randy Orton, man, those are my 2 favorite guys right there.
What current wrestlers have you enjoyed working with the most?
Yeah, I would say there's actually 3 guys right now that I had that I really enjoyed wrestling. Number 1 on my list is going to be a guy named Big Time Bill Collier, who I think is the absolute best wrestler on the independents to never get a contract. Second, I would put my old arch nemesis Cole Carter, who's in AEW. That would be the second one, and then a guy that I just wrestled recently, Flip Gordon. That would be the third guy. So those, I would say, would be the 3 guys that I enjoyed the most.
What is your most embarrassing moment in wrestling?
I would say most embarrassing moment was probably going to be when, obviously as a heel, I I was actually trying to be too much of a cocky. At first, as I was a heel, I was trying to act like a flippy guy, just because I was trying to berate flippy guys, and I went up to the top rope, and actually, not on purpose, but I actually slipped off the top rope because I am not a top rope guy, and the fans. I'm sure the people there could tell you that they were probably laughing their asses off at me because I went up to the top rope and literally fell off as I jumped off. But I think it added to the match. It added to the story of the match that a technical guy is going up to the top rope to do something because he got a little bit too cocky, and that ended up costing me the match. So I would say that my most embarrassing moment was almost a blessing in disguise because it told me that not only do I have no business going up to the top rope, but I am not a flippy guy. So hope that answers your question.
The hardest I laughed at somebody going on the top rope that probably shouldn't have been was a manager in the match that they were involved in, even though he wrestled some too, was when Hellfire McGuire went up on the top rope to try to interfere in a match.
I'm sure it didn't work out in his favor, but it's one of those things where you kind of would expect that to happen if you were a fan.
Right. I mean, it was basically the way anybody would have probably written it.
That's how it happened to me.
What's the hardest bump you've ever taken?
As you can see, the way that I look and the way that I wrestle, I'm trying to do this for as long as I can. So my style and the way that I wrestle is very, very, very smart. And I limit and make sure that I don't do anything I'm gonna get hurt in the ring, or I'm gonna take a bump that's gonna kill my body, anything like that. I'm very, very cautious of my surroundings and the way that I wrestle. I I did take a spear from a big time Bill Collier a match last year on the apron where he speared me and I took a bump kind of on the apron. It didn't look too vicious, but I kind of bumped to where part of my like upper back I could kind of hit like the wood on the ring, which is there's probably like a little centimeter part of the wood that doesn't have the mat on top of it, just because it sits on the end. And I didn't cut, but I felt that. So that would be my most one of the worst bumps I've taken. Luckily, it wasn't off of a truck through a flaming table, or in these any videos you see of these crazy guys doing these crazy bumps like that. Mine was just more of a you know. Game of inches. I was just a little bit unlucky on the bump that I took.
I've seen some pretty vicious bumps on the apron before, and a lot of fans don't realize. And when I was in front row at an event at Monster Factory, and the seats were so close to the ring when we were leaving, I actually put my hand on the mat and slapped it a couple of times for my daughter so she could see that it's not a trampoline like so many people think, and that there's actually wood under there.
And that is the hardest part of the ring too. So I mean, it's pretty much falling on your butt on the sidewalk. I mean, there's no way to get past it.
Could you tell me what your proudest moment in pro wrestling is?
I don't really look at like accolades or big matches as proud moments. I look more as, being blessed by having great parents. My parents come to every single show. I would say really my most proud moment is just it happens pretty frequently is when my parents come to a show and I'm out there in the middle of the ring doing my thing and I can see a smile on their face. To me, that's the most proud thing because I know, and I'm so confident in my physical abilities that I know that I'm going to be the WWE champion one day. I know that I'm going to main event WrestleMania one day. I know that I'm going to win all these big matches on these big shows. But to me, the most proud moment is just, my parents, having a good time watching their son live his dream and do what he loves to do. That to me is the most proud thing.
And could you talk to me about what you like about Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling and their approach and style to pro wrestling?
First of all, I'm so glad that I got to Mid-Atlantic and I got connected through a mutual friend, Doug Grubb, Doug Delicious. And what I love about Mid-Atlantic Wrestling is it's exactly what I want wrestling to be and showcase. It's an old school, gritty, get down to business wrestling. It's not overproduced. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just that old school grit wrestling where it's two guys going in the ring and having an athletic contest and going in there and having a wrestling match. I think Mid-Atlantic Wrestling is probably one of, if not the most professional independent wrestling promotions I've ever been to in terms of just presentation, the way that it's set up, the ring. It's probably the best ring that I've ever seen in my life besides a WWE ring. And that's what I love about Mid-Atlantic Wrestling is it treats wrestling seriously like a sport, which is what I'm all about.
I agree with a lot of that. I grew up in the 80s watching wrestling, so I'm totally with that as well. And I went to the last Fairfax show, and I actually had Preston Quinn on the podcast before that show, and everything he was saying was just made me want to go to the show even more, even though I already had tickets to it. So I'm going to be, unless things change, I'm going to be at the show the 28th in Fairfax.
That's awesome. I'll probably see you there too. I can't wait for that show too. It seems like it's going to be a big show. Sometimes I wish I was born in the 70s or 80s just to be able to work the territory or just see what that environment was like, because I always watch those old tapes, whether it's Mid-Atlantic or it's Bill Watts Mid-South, any of the Crockett stuff, or Dallas, anything with like Cornette or any old school stuff like that. I love watching that old wrestling because it doesn't get more real than that.
I grew up watching Crockett.
Man, there you go. You understand, you appreciate when wrestling is presented seriously and when it's done right. It's magic.
And Cornette is my favorite wrestling podcaster, so that's another thing. So
I love it.
Could you talk about any other shows you're going to be in coming up soon?
Yeah, I have a very, very, very busy schedule. I think the only weekend that I am not booked is going to be Christmas weekend because obviously most people aren't going to run that weekend anyways. So I'm very blessed to be booked every weekend for the rest of the year. Actually, tomorrow we have IWC Super Indie, which is my home promotion, IWC, where I'm actually the current reigning IWC High Stakes champion. I'll be in a six-man tag match against my number one rival in wrestling, Big Time Bill Collery, who's also the IWC World Heavyweight Champion. That will be tomorrow. And then next week, I'll be defending my MCW Tag Team Championships with my partner in crime, Tim Spriggs, for 2 nights, Friday and Saturday night. It'll be Autumn Armageddon Night 2, which Friday, October 13th at the RJ Meyer Arena right there in Joppa, Maryland. And then Autumn Armageddon Night 3 the following day will be down in Hollywood, Maryland at the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Hall where we'll be defending our titles again on a second night with the Godfather will be there. And then the 21st of October, that will be Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. I think it's in West Point, Virginia. And then Friday the 27th, I'll be back up in Boston for a Wrestling Federation of America. Saturday the 28th, I'll be down where you're going to be at, the show down there at the Jewish place. And then Sunday the 29th, I'll be at BPW, Battlefield Pro Wrestling, which is ran by Alpha Jr. And that's what the rest of my month looks like. Busy, a lot of action, which is pretty much the goal of any independent wrestler is to stay busy.
And I'll see you wrestle next Friday night as well, because I live about 15 minutes from the RJ Meyer Arena.
Oh my gosh, I would highly encourage you to come to an MCW show. I'm sure you know MCW has been around for almost over 20 years. It's probably one of the top, if not the top, current indie promotion out there. It's ran by that guy, Dan McDevitt, who I'm sure everybody in Maryland has heard of MCW. If you're not doing anything on Friday or Saturday night or in the future, I would highly encourage anybody to come to an MCW show.
I'm already going to be there, and I haven't missed a show in a couple of years, actually.
Well, there you go. I'm sure you and I have probably either made eye contact in the crowd or you've seen me, and I probably can't remember. I can't remember if I've ever.
I saw your surprise first appearance.
Okay, perfect. Well, you see, you're in on the know. You obviously see what's going on, so it's and you're going to quality shows. I mean, Mid-Atlantic and MCW. I don't think it really gets any better than that.
I've probably been with different companies to like 19 or 20 shows this year so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know MCW is really looking at finishing this year off strong. I know that the people that come are going to be in for something special on next Friday and Saturday night. So and then we got a couple big shows in November and big shows in December. So it'll be a fun weekend or a fun rest of the year for anybody involved with MCW, whether it's a worker, a fan, anybody. When you think of great wrestlers, they all have one thing that kind of separates themselves from everybody else. Whereas me, I wear the headgear because obviously with the headgear on, it just adds to my look. I already look great, but I feel like with the headgear, it's that icing on the cake for me. When I had the headgear on, people know that, oh shit, this is a real athlete. This isn't going to be any kind of hokey or silly things that we've seen in the past. This is going to be a guy that, a technical guy that can do everything. And that's exactly why I wear the headgear, and I wear it with pride.
I think it's intimidating too when you come out with the way you look and the headgear on too. So it's just fear the gear is a good slogan to have.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer too. And you gotta have. I tell all these young wrestlers coming up. I tell them, you don't have to look like me. You can try, but if you don't look very very good physically, then you have to find a way to stand out, And with me, with Fear the Gear, the headgear, that's kind of my way of, getting my catchphrase. But that's really the most important thing in wrestling is everybody remembers moments and catchphrases. Whether it's The Rock, Stone Cold, Undertaker, John Cena, everybody remembers their famous lines and their mannerisms.
One of the things, and I'll ask you another question to follow up with this, is I'll mention what Preston Quinn said to me in his podcast when I asked him for advice for any young wrestlers coming up. And his first point of advice was to hit the gym.
You and I could probably go on. I could go on an hour rant about that. I mean, I have the same viewpoints as Jim Cornette does about pro wrestling. I'm the kind of guy that's why I don't really think very highly of many guys in the indies, because I'm just going to speak from personal experience. There's too many guys that in pro wrestling right now that look like they got dressed at Dick's Sporting Goods and also look like the guy that should be working at Jiffy Lube. And you tell me if I'm wrong. There's so many guys out there that look like they never went to a gym, or they never went to a tanning bed, or they don't know what it means to eat healthy. And on top of that, they don't have any professional looking gear, and they consider themselves a professional wrestler. And I take insult with that, because I have been in plenty, trust me when I tell you, I have been in plenty independent wrestling locker rooms where I feel ashamed, embarrassed that I have to be in the same card, or I'm going to be in the same match as somebody else that doesn't take it as seriously as I do and has the audacity to call themselves a professional wrestler. And if I call myself a professional wrestler, that doesn't really mean anything to me when I'm on a show with a bunch of fans that want to be, that want to be a pro wrestler. And that goes back to what Preston Quinn says. You have to look like an athlete. If you can't look like an athlete, you have to find a way to make yourself stand out. But that's my rant on what Preston Quinn told you.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. And I mean, there's too many people who think the look of Spike Dudley and being able to do a bunch of flips is the way to succeed.
And I'll watch, and there's a lot of upcoming guys too, and that'll ask me to watch their match, because, and I try to tell them the reason why my stuff looks so well in the ring is because I don't do anything that Spencer Slade wouldn't do. And what I mean by that is, in pro wrestling, I'm not really going to go behind the curtain with this, but you probably get it. But in pro wrestling, you control how you look. You can hide your weaknesses and showcase your strengths. So if I know that I'm not a flippy guy, or that I can't springboard off the ropes or go up to the top rope, then why would I try in a wrestling match? Nobody's ever going to know that I'm not good at that, because I never did it in the first place. And that's my point is, every indie guy out there, they want to do all of this stuff, but yet the core things that they lack, having a good look and being able to throw a real believable punch. That right there, in my opinion, is the top two most important things in pro wrestling. Have a look and be able to look like you can whip somebody's ass.
That makes a lot of sense. If you could please run down your personal social media account handles for us and anything else you want to promote.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, my name is Spencer Slade. I have a couple of different names that people call me. Some people refer to me as the Anomaly, the Submission Specialist, the Physical Specimen, the Show Stealer, and you can catch me on X. I don't call it Twitter anymore. I call it X. You can follow me at X at Slade Wrestler. You can follow me on Instagram at Slade Wrestling. You can follow me on Facebook at Spencer Slade. You can check out my YouTube channel, which is Fear the Gear. And am I missing any other social medias there?
Just some that, I mean, a few people in wrestling got on Threads, but it's pretty much died down to where nobody's on it anymore from what I've seen.
No. And you can catch me all over, in the Northeast, whether I'm all the way up there in Boston or New Hampshire for WFA, down here in Pittsburgh for IWC. I'll be out there in Maryland for MCW. I'm out there towards Allentown, Broadheadsville, where BPW, Battlefield Pro Wrestling, is at. I'm all throughout Maryland and Virginia and North Carolina for Mid-Atlantic Pro Wrestling. So I have a good routine of about 4 to 5 to 6 different promotions I'm on regularly, two of which I have their championship titles. And I'm always posting content all the time. I believe in a great social media presence and self promotion. So you will never ever be able to find out what Spencer Slade's not doing. You'll be able to see everything that I am doing.
A friend of mine once said that if you don't promote yourself, nobody else will.
Amen. And that's actually the other biggest piece of advice I tell these young guys is you have to promote yourself. I mean, you are your own brand. Um, the more pictures, highlights, matches, promos, cool backstage videos, anything that you come up with. It's pro wrestling. Yeah, I treat it as a sport, but because it's considered in the entertainment business, it's all about content. So you have to promote and share and create as much content as possible. That's the only way that you build your name, create your own buzz.
You got to do your own promos because of the way the things are now, you don't have the weekly TV show like the Territory days where you would go to the studio and record about 7 or 8 promos or maybe 20 promos in a day in some companies.
Exactly, and you have no excuse not to do that. Like I have my tripod right here. How hard is it to take your camera or your tripod, or if you have somebody at home, just shoot a quick promo of you cutting a promo. It's not that hard. Same thing with watching wrestling. You got YouTube, you got Peacock, you got all the different streaming services. There's no reason why you can't be watching as much wrestling as possible. It's all readily available out there for you.
And one thing that I've noticed too is I'll give you one person that I like the promos that he does is Zach Ramsey's.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to remember if I've ever heard of that guy. Where does he work?
He's in Delaware, but he works more up in New Jersey, New York, and maybe even farther northeast. He came down to Delaware a couple months ago to DCW, I think.
Okay, well, he's out there hustling and cutting promos and making a name for himself. I can respect that.
He even did a 5-part web series that wasn't wrestling related. It was kind of like a Jeff Hardy web series or Matt Hardy web series. And he actually did a promo. He got into a promo war with somebody, and I sometimes on Twitter I'll try to instigate, or X now, I'll try to instigate wordplay between people that have a match coming up, and I'll make a comment about something, and it got to the point that he put the interaction with him and his wrestler for his upcoming match into his next promo video that he did, and even showed my tweets and his tweets and the wrestler's tweets for it. So
That's pretty cool. I'm all for that. If you can, I'm all for guys and girls doing whatever they can to create as much content as possible. I put this. I always give this. I always give this example to people. It's like you could have one fan, you could have 1 million followers or 1,000 followers. There's still going to be somebody that's waiting for you to post something. They're thinking about what you're going to post. They're just waiting. They're on their fingertips. They're on Twitter or social media or Instagram. They're waiting for you because they're a fan of you to post something or some kind of content so they can see what you're up to. So why not give those people as many different things as possible? That's the whole idea of being a pro wrestler is to provide a service and content to your fans, which are your customers.
getting back into your style of wrestling, I just wanted to ask you how you interact and how your style works well. I mean, I've seen it in the ring, of course, and you work well together, but how does your jiu-jitsu experience go along with Tim Spriggs' experience to work together as a team?
That's a great question. So obviously people know that him and I are Capital Punishment. We're the reigning defending MCW Tag Team Champions, and I feel like him and I, mark my words, if it's not this year, it's going to be early next year. Him and I are going to be signed somewhere. I feel like there is nobody in pro wrestling that has the uniqueness or real legit backgrounds that we have. Obviously, you have established tag teams like FTR who are incredible, or like the Creed brothers down NXT. Those are two guys that we would love to get signed and do something with. Me, All-American athlete, Tim Spriggs, legit black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And a lot of people like to consider us as like the modern day Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas, Team Angle, which is it kind of what we are. We're just two guys that take this business so seriously. And instead of doing a bunch of cool moves with your buddies on a trampoline, we just want to choke people out and apply our submission holds in the middle of a professional wrestling ring. I'm more of like the hard hitting striker, where a submission guy, whereas Tim's more technical with his jiu-jitsu and his grappling abilities. And I think him and I make an incredible him and I make an incredible team because we just have such similar styles. And we can do all the cool pro wrestling moves that all the little flippy guys do too. But once again, you don't see us do that because what we're doing is so much better than what all these other guys are doing. So why stick with what we can do,
And tag team wrestling has been underappreciated for so many years and has had a resurgence in some places lately. And I think that's a good thing because I think it makes a company complete if they have a really good tag team wrestling program.
Absolutely. And obviously, when it comes down to tag team wrestling, I like it when it's two tag teams having a tag team wrestling match. I don't like it when it's four guys going out there having four singles matches. Tag team wrestling is something that you appreciate it back in the territory day. Tag team wrestling was as good as it can ever get. Tim and I are, and what people don't realize too is it's not like Tim and I have been tag teaming for years. And him and I have had 4 matches together. We literally were formed in May of this year. So we won the MCW tag team titles from Joe Keys and Dante. That was our 3rd match together. So this Friday will be our 5th match together. So we've already shown incredible chemistry with one another in such an early time. And I think that just goes back to just having the same mindset and the same style.
Okay, and I don't have any other questions. I just want to thank you for joining me today for this interview. And I want to mention, for the purposes of calendar reasons, that you mentioned a match tomorrow, that this recording is taking place on October the 6th. I look forward to seeing you at MCW next week. And I'll also look forward to seeing you especially at MATW in Fairfax. That's a great venue. It's a great company. And I'm really glad that you're wrestling there because I think you're a good fit there from everything I've seen you at other places.
Well, I really appreciate those kind words. I'm obviously somebody that's, very, very humble, and I love doing interviews like this. So thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to seeing you at MCW. If I don't there, I'll be seeing you at Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. And either way, those are going to be 2 great promotions running 2 great shows. So I'm looking forward to both of them.
Thank you. And now for our credits. I'm Jeff Quinton, and I'm the host. Our producer is Scott English. If you'd like to contribute to defray costs of this podcast and receive a mention as a producer in these credits, please contact us at dmvprowrestling@gmail.com. Our production assistant is Josie Quinton. Musical credits are provided in the notes for this episode. Thanks again for joining us, and be sure to visit dmvprowrestling.com every day for the latest pro wrestling news.
Tickets to the gun show! Yeah! 2 tickets to the gun show!